Today on Pilot's Discretion, we're joined by safety expert and writer David Miller. He tells us about flying single-pilot jets, what a lead passenger is, and car detailing. Pilot's Discretion starts right now. Hi everyone, I'm John Zimmerman, and thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion from Sporties. Visit sporties.com/podcast for today's show links and access to our complete archives. And remember, you can send us an email with your comments, questions, and guest ideas anytime at podcast@sporties.com. Today, my guest is David Miller, a successful entrepreneur who used airplanes to grow his car wash chemical business over many years. After selling that business in 2005, he became a founding member of the Citation Jet Pilots Association, where he has worked extensively on safety projects and presented all over the country. David is also a longtime writer, contributing to Twin and Turbine magazine for many years, and he's even written a book titled Confessions of a Very Private Pilot. David has been flying for more than 50 years, logging time in piston singles, piston twins, jets, everything in between. And today he is the owner of a beautifully restored Beech Baron, which I will definitely ask about. David, welcome to Pilot's Discretion.
Thank you, John. I guess we're finished now. I guess we can, that's it, huh?
It's quite a lead-in, but I'm going to try to make you earn your place here, which I'm confident you will. You've presented on and written about a lot of topics over the years, often with a humorous touch, but safety seems to be the common thread in everything you talk about. And as I understand it, your interest was piqued in this subject many years ago by a very personal connection to an accident. So tell us how that got you down this safety path.
So my father had a business partner. We manufactured car wax and polish, and his partner owned an M model Bonanza. And unfortunately, he was the kind of pilot that was an accident looking for a place to happen. He had previously landed gear up in his Bonanza, and then in about 1976, he died trying to shoot an NDB approach to 200.5 in his Bonanza, and I was asked to go out to the scene of the accident in Merkel, Texas, in West Texas. And I remember I was probably, 23 or something like that. I remember seeing, the result of that tragedy on the ground, and I think that's what I had always been involved in aviation. I was already a private pilot then. I got my license in high school, but I think when I saw the effects of bad decision making, it made an indelible place in my memory.
Understandably so. Well, if we fast forward, I know some of the work you've done recently with the Citation Jet Pilots Association, CJP. There's been a partnership with Flight Safety, and the focus has been to reduce runway excursions, so runway overruns or off the side of the runway. Which seems like a simple thing, but is a significant problem. So first, explain why those are a persistent problem in light jets, and then maybe talk specifically about what this Safe to Land program is all about.
Well, it's persistent runway excursions because of behavior. We all, not we, all of us, but a lot of owner pilots, single pilots, are very driven. They like to get from point A to point B in the least amount of time, and oftentimes that results in approach speeds in excess of what's necessary. And so at CJP, we were experiencing what we thought were too high rates of runway excursions. They are seldom fatal, but they're often very damaging to airframes, and a lot of times pilots can't even get insurance after an accident like that. So we undertook a very large study with a group called Presage out of Canada, who had worked exclusively with airlines around the world in looking at behavior, changing behavior at many, many airlines in approach procedures and decision-making and that kind of thing. And we studied our own members, hundreds of them, and from the results of that study, we formed a working group within CJP to look at what our pilots were doing. It wasn't a situation where we hired somebody to come in and give us a 6-inch binder with how we should operate, but instead, we decided to go from the ground up to look at the psychology of what our pilots were thinking when they went around or when they didn't go around, or when they tried to salvage an approach. And we found some remarkable results. And we took those results and formed a group within our own organization. We called it a working group of 10 volunteers who spent 3 days at a flight safety facility in Wichita looking at the results and writing our own SOPs, standard operating procedures, for our members. And from that, we developed, I helped develop the program called Safe to Land. And then flight safety made a huge investment and actually was able to modify their simulators so that we could put our members in situations in the simulator where they would experience floating down the runway or drifting down the runway. Very different from wake turbulence encounters that many pilots get in the simulator. But this was the first of its kind. No one had ever done this that we know of in the world. And it became very popular. It was adopted. It's been adopted by Gulfstream, and other airframes are looking at. There are other aviation pilot groups that are now want to emulate that kind of program. And the bottom line is we came up with verbalized call-outs on the approach. For instance, at 1,000 feet, we verbalized the word stable, and that means that our airplane is configured for landing. We have the gear and the flaps in the appropriate position. At 500 feet, we say the word stable, which means we are within a plus or minus variance on the airspeed for reference on the approach speed. And if we're not in those situations, then we verbalize the offending parameter. If we're 30 knots fast, we would say airspeed, airspeed, airspeed until we are stable. And we also made the decision, our group, that we would make the go around decision at 200 feet. In other words, as long as we are stable or trending stable, we will wait until 200 feet to make that go around decision. And then at that point, there is no discussion, there is no thinking, there is no rationality. It is an automatic go around. And it has the program itself. We trademarked it Safe to Land, and it has, I think, radically changed the thinking and hopefully the behavior of our members that fly citations. This study that we did took the landing phase and made it into a science instead of, when I've been flying for 55, 53 years, whatever it is, I always knew kind of where I was going to land on the runway, maybe not exactly. And I didn't know exactly when I broke out of an instrument approach and I had, red and white VASI lights, even though I was on the glide path. I didn't know exactly what that meant. And we have taken all this and made it into a science so that the term "a rising tide floats all boats," that not all of our members adopt everything we do, but a lot of our members adopt some things. And so it's made our entire group safer. Our accident rates have come down. The insurance companies are now looking at our programs very carefully, and some of which are even requiring our training and our extra standard, gold standard training that we do at Citation Jets, especially for older pilots like myself. As we start to get above 70, the choices and the opportunities are very much limited. But the more training we do, and the more we adopt those kind of policies and procedures, the easier it is to get coverage and continue our flying.
It's a great program. I love the data-driven approach you took to it, not just preaching, but really focusing on the numbers. And I think there's lots of lessons there. Certainly, if you fly a Bonanza or a Cirrus or a 182, there's plenty of lessons to take away from that. It's definitely not unique to jets or citations. So it's a fascinating program, and I think CJP is to be congratulated for that work. Another program I know you've worked on and written about is maybe related, but it's what you term "what good looks like." And I love this because it's the opposite of many safety programs where we highlight failures. We talk about accidents. And in this case, you're talking about what you should do. So tell me first about why you think it's important to focus on what good looks like instead of just the accidents. And then again, what is this program all about, and what are the lessons for pilots?
Sure. I came up with the idea, a number of years ago, about putting myself in a simulator, in various citation simulators, and experiencing some of what probably every pilot experiences at one point in their career, whether it's an unstable approach or confusion about the automation in the cockpit, or taking off after maintenance and some of the switches are not in the appropriate position. All the kind of things that happen to all of us. You fly long enough, and those kind of things will happen to you. So our safety committee unanimously decided that the pilot who should look bad or look challenged on every flight was me. There was no one else was nominated. It was unanimous, and so they put me in the simulator, and we produced over 40 videos, and they are available at citationjetpilots.com. You can actually, I think, access them without even being a member. But we show me experiencing, engine out situations or just you name it, and we don't crash in the simulator, but we get close to it when we get into uncomfortable situations, and I try to imagine what it would be like for a friend of mine to experience that same thing. And then after my experience or lack of experience, we cut to a real professional safety guy, and he says, David was having a little struggle doing that go around. It didn't look like it was very organized. Let's see how we could do it in a more professional, safe manner. And so we showed the kind of the good and the bad of all those kind of scenarios. And I think it's turned out to be, we have thousands of views because our members like to put themselves in that exact situation, and maybe they have not experienced the exact same thing, but they have experienced something similar, and lets them kind of think about how they would do it, and then look and see, what the correct procedure or the safer procedure would be. So it's been very successful, and I'm actually shooting a series now for the Piper group, the PMOPA, who wants to do the very same thing. So I think it has some legs.
So what can I do if I'm transitioning into a jet for the first time to get prepared and to be safe? Obviously, I need to study the books. I need to go to initial training. There's all the things that the FAA, the insurance company, are going to make sure I do. But outside of the obvious, what are some other things I should do to prepare myself to be the pilot of a jet?
There are a lot of new terms when you come from a piston or cirrus or a turbine aircraft that only involve jets, second segment climb, and those kind of. So when you go for a type rating, and I'm a strong believer in simulator-based type rating, you can do it in the airplane, and there are some advantages even to buying a jet and having a professional pilot fly with you for a number of hours to get, especially if it's your first jet, to get you in the comfort range so that when you go to a full type rating course, which is typically several weeks and involves a check ride, you are not dunked into a situation where you have to learn. It's like drinking from a fire hose. And so if you're comfortable with the airplane to some degree, you can take the stress of that out. So I think having experience, it's really hard to find someone that you can fly with in a jet because it's just difficult to coordinate that. But we have had a number of members who bought their first jet and then hired a professional pilot, flew in the right or left seat, got instruction for maybe even a year. Yes, it's expensive, but it is certainly a way to reduce the stress and improve your performance when you have to take that full check ride.
Talking more generally about owner groups or type clubs, which you've, as you just mentioned, worked with a lot, what do you think the value is here? What do I get from being a member of a type club like CJP or one of the other groups out there?
I have the pleasure of being able to speak to almost all of them, and so I get to be a member, quote unquote, and I get to see how they operate and what their focus is, and they're all very, very worthwhile. Typically, they cost from $300 to $500 a year. Many of them, like CJP, have discounts that if you join, you get more than that back from discounted services from Textron or people like that. The big help is in the camaraderie and the ability almost all of these organizations had chat rooms with thousands of posts. So you can even, if you're really smart, and very few people do this, you'll say you're thinking about a Piper Meridian, or for instance, you can join the Piper group and go to their events and ask questions, real of owners instead of not necessarily salespeople. How does the airplane perform? What are its shortcomings? And you can read the chat rooms for they're literally thousands of pages of all kind of opinions, but you can develop a huge knowledge base about any airplane that you might be interested in. You can go to their conventions, and not many, as I say, not many people do that because many people view these as private clubs, but they all are looking for new members and new interest, and all of them welcome people, even if they don't have an airplane. I know the CJP folks have a part of their convention called First Jet Ownership, and so they actually have a 3-hour breakout for people who haven't bought their airplane yet when they're deciding what to buy. So it's these organizations can provide just huge amounts of information for very little money.
They're a great investment. I've been a member of many owner groups over the years, and especially that first year or two when you own the airplane, it's just unbelievable how much knowledge you can get out of the collective wisdom of other owners. So wholeheartedly agree. In fact, I saw you speak earlier this year at the Pilatus Owners and Pilots Association convention. I was there soaking up knowledge when you spoke. And you presented there on a topic that I have occasionally heard referenced, but not much, which was this concept of a lead passenger. And you made the pitch that GA pilots should appoint a lead passenger on every flight. This is not just a charter thing for Gulfstreams. So tell me about that concept. Why does that matter? Why should I do that in my Bonanza or my Baron?
Yeah, the concept came from corporate aviation, big airplane, the Gulfstream and Falcon and that kind of thing, and Challengers, where you might not have a trained flight attendant, but there needed to be someone in the airplane who was trained to some degree, who could handle the emergency side, the passenger side of an emergency or an unusual situation. I use the analogy of a lithium battery burning in the back of an airplane. If you're flying single pilot and that computer is on fire behind you, and you've got passengers, you're going to have a lot of screaming, crying, smoke, and who knows what else. And it's very easy. I make the analogy of flying single pilot in the left seat, and as you turn to the right to look in the back, your arm accidentally disconnects the autopilot. And there's so much screaming, but you don't even hear the beep, boop, beep, boop. You don't hear that because of what's going on. So now your attention's focused in the back with screaming passengers or anxious passengers. It might even be a medical situation. And your airplane's now in a 60-degree bank when you turn around and you're faced with, a very difficult situation. So if you can reduce that possibility by appointing someone that flies with you on a consistent basis, many of us fly with our companions, our wife, for instance. Patty is our lead passenger for our family, and she knows where the fire extinguisher is. She knows how to open the doors. She knows how to connect the oxygen mask. She knows where the burn bag is for the computer. So instead of me being diverted from my attention of flying the airplane, she can handle that anxiety, and it also relieves the passengers' stress somewhat because they know getting on the plane, they know that Patty is the lead passenger. So they are told to address any concerns they have to her rather than the pilot. And you can do it if it's a business situation, you can do it with a frequent business passenger. But it's everywhere I've presented it, I see a lot of nodding heads because people, they could see that happening to them in that situation. And if you can reduce that possibility, everybody else feels better.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And I think many pilots maybe do it informally, but I think there's value in making it more formal and having some type of basic training for the person who's going to be a lead passenger and identifying it. So as you said, if nothing else, it might give the other passengers some confidence.
I think we discount the fact that there are a lot of passengers that fly with us that would prefer not to. They don't like to fly. They're flying with us because they love us, because they know it's our passion.
Mm-hmm.
because they want to get to the same destination we do. But if they had a choice, they would probably not. So just getting on the airplane, and they probably don't verbalize that because it just creates problems. But if they understand that and feel more comfortable, because if something happens, if there's going to be someone else to help them reduce that anxiety, it probably works for the pilot and the passengers as well.
Great long-term investment in family or company togetherness if everybody's a little bit happier flying on the airplane. David, let's take a quick break and we'll be back with some more questions.
Have you ever struggled with a headset that pinches or breaks its seal just because you're wearing glasses or a hat? Or maybe you've tried to make a critical call from the cockpit, only to be met with muffled, unclear audio? It's more than just an annoyance. It's a distraction you don't need in the left seat. It's time for an upgrade. Introducing the Lightspeed Zulu 4, the brand new premium headset from Lightspeed Aviation, available exclusively at Sporties. Experience truly unparalleled comfort and superior noise reduction with Lightspeed's unique frame-fit ear seals. These aren't just comfortable, they adapt perfectly, maintaining a secure noise-blocking seal around your ears even when you're wearing glasses, sunglasses, or a hat. And when you need to communicate, be heard like never before. The Zulu 4 features Lightspeed's best microphone yet, which offers an AI-enhanced mode for Bluetooth, ensuring your phone call to ATC or flight service is a remarkable 2 times clearer. But the Zulu 4 isn't just new innovations. You still get Lightspeed's renowned active noise reduction for an incredibly quiet cockpit, plus the rugged build quality you trust with durable Kevlar cables and a robust stainless steel headband. The Lightspeed Zulu 4 offers the perfect blend of innovation and proven performance, all for $200 less than other premium headsets. Get yours today, only at Sporties. Visit sporties.com/Zulu4 to learn more. Now, back to Pilot's Discretion.
We are back with David Miller, who has written for Twin and Turbine magazine for many years, covering topics that are relevant to owners of TBMs, King Airs, Citations, even high-performance pistons. And David, one of the most important topics in this world recently has been insurance, particularly, as you mentioned, for older pilots. What do you think the current situation is there? If I want to be single pilot operator of a turbine aircraft, what are my options right now, and is it getting any better?
It is getting better. That's the flavor of the day. The market ebbs and flows. 2 or 3 years ago, it was very, very difficult. There are more underwriters on the scene now competing, so the premiums are coming down and it's loosening up a little bit. I would say above age 70, the best thing you can do is for those of us who went to college, we remember writing an essay to get as part of our entry into a college. We had to sell ourselves. And there were a lot of years when you could call up any insurance company and, you get a quote. When it gets competitive, or especially when you get above 70, you need to go back to the college days and write the essay. And by that, I mean, you need to write a full page of everything that is, that governs the way you fly. For instance, if you fly a jet and you don't fly into less than 4,000 foot runways, you don't go internationally, you train twice a year, all the things that you kind of take for granted or you have forgotten about. For instance, you may be involved in one of your pilot organization's safety committee, anything that makes you stand out to the underwriter, because when was the last time you had lunch with your underwriter? The answer is never. So you are being represented by a third party. Some do a great job, some don't. But you've got to produce a document that you hope can get in front of the underwriter that will say, hey, wow, this I haven't seen one of these in a long time. So it differentiates you and makes you a more valuable or a less risky insured.
It's great advice because, as I understand it, in the insurance market, Most of the single engine piston world, it's pretty automated, the underwriting. If you're going to get a 172 insured, it's unlikely that a human underwriter is going to spend a lot of time looking at that. They're going to be running it through the formula. That's not true on turbines. If you're trying to insure a CJ2 or a TBM or something with a much higher hull value, you're probably going to have some humans who are spending some time looking at it. So telling that story really does make a difference. So
Yeah, and in the next, I would say in the next, certainly the next 5 years, you're going to see insurance premiums based on ADSB or some kind of performance captured data. So, there are people who don't like Big Brother watching them, but ADSB is out there. If you are a member, or even if you're not a member of a pilot group, and you can capture your performance data through Cloud Ahoy or Flystow or some other way, you don't necessarily have to provide that information, but it certainly makes you a better pilot if you are monitoring your performance. And just be prepared, because before you stop flying, they may be actually telling you how you fly instead of the other way around. The other thing is, if you can, Citation jet pilots and others have a training, uh, um, or a training programs called CJP. It's called Gold Standard, and there are about 10 criteria. If you meet those criteria, one of which is training 2 times a year, you can receive an award. In their case, it's called Gold Standard. The MMOPA, PMOPA people have it. I think the TBM folks have it, and they're all going into recognition of training above and beyond what's required by the FAA. So if you can document that, it's a pedigree, just like a report card that you can present to the underwriter.
another topic related to the insurance one is one pilot versus two pilots. And most pilots I know were individualistic type people. We like to do things solo. A lot of pilots like to fly solo, even up into some pretty high performance jets. But the insurance company doesn't always feel the same way. And I know throughout your career, when you were building your business, flying jets, in many cases, you did hire a co-pilot to fly with you so you could stay safe and also stay sharp on business and have some flexibility there. So talk through that decision. Some owners, I think today are hesitant to have that co-pilot, but I personally believe there's great value in it. So how should somebody evaluate that decision?
When I were building our business, I had a Duke at the time, and I came to the decision that I could not run my business and run my airplane to the standards that I wanted to do every day. So I hired, even though the Duke is certainly a single pilot and most of them are flown that way, I hired a second pilot to fly with me, and he stayed with me to the B-100 King Air, and then a Sabreliner, which required two pilots, Falcon 10, which did, Falcon 50. And some of the most fun flying I had was, flying left seat, going to do business, coming back to the airport, briefing the weather with the other pilot who had done all the mundane chores, checking the weather, filling the tanks, all the kind of things that take time and mental power away from me running my business. So I could not quite jump in the plane, but almost, and fly left seat and enjoy that part of it, and operate as a crew. The challenge is finding someone that is really good in that right seat. I think a lot of pilots tend to look for they're the lowest bidder type thing, and they hire the guy who, taught them in the 172, or someone that has, is not a wow pilot. And I've always thought that if you're going to pay someone to fly with you, you need to learn something on every flight that you did not learn before. And if that person cannot teach you that, you're wasting your money. So I hired really good people, overqualified people who would train me, who would teach me. And I learned a lot from that. I learned the crew environment, and I just absolutely love flying crew because with the right person, it's safer.
The statistics bear that out. I do a lot of flying with two pilots as well. And if you're humble enough to read the accident statistics, what you find is that it's just flat out safer. There's a reason the airlines have two pilots up there.
Right.
And so it's certainly not the answer for everybody, but I agree with you. In some cases, when you're trying to mix business and flying, there's great value in being able to turn off your pilot brain, turn on your business brain, but then know when you get back to the airport, you've got somebody else there to fly with you. David, we always finish Pilot's Discretion with a lightning round called Ready to Copy. So I'll throw out some questions, rapid fire style here on a range of topics, and you read back with your quick answer. You ready to copy?
All right, go.
What is one skill I should practice if I'm transitioning into a turbine airplane for the first time?
Verbalizing checklists.
And what's an example of that?
Your departure procedure. What happens in an engine failure? Exactly what you're going to do.
What is the best citation model Cessna ever made?
The Citation Mustang. For the bang for the buck, it's the lowest performer, but it doesn't do everything in anything number one, but it does almost everything really, really well. I've owned 3 of them, so.
You mentioned the Sabreliner, which is a really cool airplane. What's the most unique feature of that airplane?
The Sabreliner had landing gear that was only about, I don't know, probably 6 feet apart. So it was squirrely on the runway. You had to square dance, or at least I did when I landed it. But it was built like a tank. It was, and the most unusual thing about the airplane, it had leading edge slats that were aerodynamically controlled, so that when they fell down or forward based on their weight. And when you got going fast enough, the airflow would push them back onto the wing. So they had no hydraulics or no electrics. It was simply mechanical.
Amazing airplane. You just completed a beautiful restoration of a P. Baron, which you wrote about in Twin and Turbine magazine with all kinds of great pictures. What was the most surprising lesson you learned during that process?
Be patient. We did a absolute complete panel with, almost everything Garmin has to offer. It takes time to do it right, longer than you think. So I think patience is probably the best thing to think about.
And what is your favorite feature of that beautiful panel?
Wow. It has the Garmin 8000 radar, which is probably one of the, it's a set it and forget it type radar. Most pilots will tell you that radar is more of an art than a science, and the Garmin 8000 makes it a science where you simply push a few buttons and it can give you tremendous amounts of information.
Baron versus P. Baron. How do I compare those if I'm considering buying one?
If you're married and she wants air conditioning and she doesn't want to suck on a oxygen mask, a P. Baron will fit the bill. As a matter of fact, my next article in the Twin and Turbine is called "Don't Ask Me How She Got There," and it's a story about how I got my wife Patty from the front right seat to the back of the cabin through that very, very narrow opening between the seats, and it involves yoga and a lot of pushing, and it's I think it's going to be quite humorous.
Well, you mentioned the humorous part. That's a highlight of much of your writing and presenting. Why do you think humor works for talking about safety?
Safety can be boring. I've always had a sense of humor, but making it interesting, making it relevant, I think it helps keep people's attention to, long as you know when to hit them with serious stuff, and you're able to make an impression on them. I think it makes it more interesting.
You mentioned simulator training. What's your favorite thing to practice in the sim?
Well, the most difficult thing is this, and the thing that almost never happens is called the V1 cut, where you lose an engine right at the worst possible moment on takeoff, and for some reason that can be the hardest thing to control in the simulator. That's probably the most challenging thing. But I think flying professionally, flying with the least amount of mistakes. I have never had a flight where I didn't make a mistake. And I think trying to make every flight as perfect as you can, and then taking the time to reflect on it after, on the drive home from the airport. I always like to do that and say, okay, what did I do really well? What did I not do so well? What do I need to focus on next time?
Such good advice. The post-flight self-debrief, I think, is one of the more undervalued things in aviation.
Yeah.
That drive home can be very revealing. I know you've been involved in the Special Olympics Airlift, so give me your 10-word sales pitch on participating in this event.
Wow, it's life-changing. Patty and I did it for the first time a couple of years ago. I know it's up next year again. If you have the opportunity just to see thousands of kids come in, most of which are flying on a small airplane for the first time in their life, and just see the smiles on their faces. Patty and I got to work all day long with Peyton Manning on the ramp, who is as nice a person as you can ever meet. Volunteered his time to come down and shake the kids' hands, and it's just a incredible experience to see what joy you can bring with your airplane.
All right, we're going to go personal here because you mentioned you learned to fly in high school, as did I. I think you also met your wife in high school, as did I. So I'm interested in comparing notes here. What is your best tip for a successful first flying date?
Wow, that's a good one. Ours was in high school, and I had previously been going for years to the control tower before I could even drive a car. My parents would drop me off, and I would buzz the tower, and they would let me up. And so those tower operators knew me as well as my parents did. And the first thing they wanted to do was to meet Patty, because they had understood that I now had a girlfriend. And so I took Patty up to the tower, and they approved of her. And then we went in a Cherokee 140, which was, all I could afford. I think they were probably $25 an hour back then, wet. And it was a great experience because I was the only kid in high school that had their pilot's license. And so I had also had a car. And so I had a unique skill set that I could compete with some of the taller, more good-looking folks in the high school.
Great life advice for all the teenage listeners of this podcast. All right, we always like to go outside aviation, and you know a lot about detailing clay. So tell me, how do I use this stuff properly?
Well, it was a stroke of luck that my company discovered that product in Japan, and it became literally a once-in-a-lifetime product for our company. And it enabled me to sell the company, actually, and buy a jet. There are now, many, many detailing clays on the market. I think the thing to do is to make sure your surface is clean on your car. And I guess for those that don't know what detailing clay is, it looks like a bar of C4 explosives, but it's not that. But you literally spray a liquid, just a lubricant, on the surface of the paint and rub this clay look like a clay bar, and it removes any kind of contaminants on the paint like nothing has ever done before. And so we were just lucky enough to find it and patent it, and it became, like I said, a cool product. I like going and meeting strangers now, and they'll ask me what I did, and I'll say something about the clay, and they'll say, "Oh, I love it. I use it." And so it's kind of neat to see total strangers using something and get a smile on their face that you had something to do with.
Our last question is always the same on Pilot's Discretion. You have one final flight, and we want to know, what are you flying and where are you going?
I'm going to fly Falcon 10, the coolest airplane. The Falcon 10 had a ref speed of 104 knots, but it also had a VMO of 370 knots, or Mach 8.7. So it could fly really slow and really fast. And I would be going from Madison to Crested Butte, Colorado.
David, thanks for being on the podcast.
Anytime. Thank you, John.
Thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion, brought to you by Sporties, training and equipping pilots worldwide for over 60 years. For more episodes and today's show links, visit sporties.com/podcast. I'm John Zimmerman. We'll see you next time on Pilot's Discretion.